good evening everyone. I would like to welcome you all to today's session of ICPC AlgoQueen 2021 Presents. Being a good techie is more than just coding. A live session with Mrs. Sreekala Sunderrajan, Director Group Program Management People and Culture Gojek, Go-To Group. Before we start the session, please know that if you have any questions during the session, type it in the chat box. We will be addressing all your questions at the end of the session. So now, without further ado, I would like to invite Sreekala ma'am to deliver the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Nija. Always a pleasure being in front of smart young women, all our Algo queens who are being participants here. And of course, a lot more who are either aspiring to be one or are just in supportive of this amazing concept. So I have a little story. Okay, so the story says that once upon a time, there was a very, very smart young techie with whatever that definition of techie meant. Okay, the entire world was solving one big problem. The problem being, yeah, hey, I want to say hello world to you. And then this bunch of people led by this smart techie came across and they said, okay, let's get this out. It has to be displayed on a big television screen and let's get into action. And then they got together, they sat over some really hot samosas, possibly some more bit of chai, and they kept talking about it. And they possibly wrote few lines that exactly translated into displaying this thing called Hello World. And it came on the screen. And then the entire world said hello. And then the story is over. Yeah. If only technology and coding was just about this, right? Now we all know that lines of whatever coding that you're doing is far more impactful than just writing some stuff and getting something on the screen, right? In today's world, technology has problems that we never ever imagined would possibly ever be solved. Or even if they have solved problems that were already solved earlier, they've just made life simpler, they've made life easier, they've made life a lot more interesting, and definitely with places like and forums like AlgoQueen on the blog, they've definitely made life a lot more competitive as well. So with that said, let's understand what it takes to be an awesome techie beyond writing amazing code. Okay, so with that said, let's get into okay. So while you see this little video, okay, I want to start off with this little video and tell me what you see for the first few seconds, and then we will figure out the rest of the story over a point of time.
By on this conveyor belt and continue into the next room where the girls will pack it. Now your job is to take each piece of candy and wrap it in one of these papers and then put it back on the belt. You understand?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Let her roll! Let her roll! Wait here. Somebody's asleep at the switch.
So we've always landed up with simple, funky, funny problems like these, right? Where we are always trying to fix simple problems like the ones on candies. But hey, let's one moment. There you go. You know, when I became an engineer, right, and just like how a lot of other people who aspire to be engineers or have become engineers, the fundamental thing is that people think engineering or amazing software is just about coding. But the truth is that when you think of coding, what do you really think of, right? When we think of coding, we think of lines of code, plenty of lines of code being written to solve a certain problem. We think of logic because all those lines of code are just not one of those things that you will write after waking up from bed. There is a lot of intelligence that goes into writing that set of code. into that set of algorithms that you design, right? Which you call as logic. Because the smartest logic is the one that makes your amazing code work amazingly well to solve those problems that you genuinely need to solve. And making sure that it is not introducing new problems into whatever you've beautifully written. The third thing that we normally think of when we talk of coding is language. It's very, very funky to say I'm great at this language. Back then, if you knew C, if you knew C++, you're like the god of coding possibly. I'm talking about few decades ago. And then came in the more hi-fi languages, right? At one point of time, it was all about just knowing more and more languages. And then we speak about final runs and outcome. So if you are able to run all of these above, the lines of code, the logic that you use to write those lines of code, the language, and then you eventually solve a problem that people can see on screen or people can see as an output, what do you get called as? You get called as an amazing coder. But the truth is that if you have to be a technologist, if you have to be an engineering mindset person, which means you're thinking of just beyond coding, being a technologist is a lot more than just writing those lines of code. And that's precisely the theme for today's talk. And why do I say this? Because you can write amazing code, but if nobody can read the way it's written, or if nobody can understand why your code is possibly better than the others, somewhere you're going to lose out. You might have written amazing code, but if it is still not in a situation where you're able to park that code in the right place to the right set of people, then there could be a problem, right? So like that, there are multiple angles through which your code can actually see the light of the day. And those are those skills that we're typically going to talk about, right? Of course, if you run a simple Google search on which language should I pick up for coding, you will have n number of options. In fact, there are sites that tell you for this particular type of use case, it can best be solved by using this particular language. There are sites that give you pieces of code, right? And we've often seen that, how they get beautifully reborn, within new incarnations in everything that people write, right? There are places, there are coach clubs, there are clubhouses that will tell you how this particular piece of code can integrate with a large platform, that they can integrate with amazing real use cases that you're trying to solve. But very few resources tell you on how the lines of code that you have written can make a big difference in the way you work together as a team. And that is what we're going to touch upon today. So the theme that we're essentially going to say is that, hey, amazing to see lines of code, because coding is going to be definitely a key foundation to all that you're doing. But is there something more that can make you genuinely be the algo queens of today and tomorrow? The first thing is interpersonal skills. If you have written amazing pieces of code, especially as you enter the industry, and you realize that this particular piece of code has a few bugs, which is normal, right? Being from the software industry and being a very, very passionate tester myself, I can tell you that there is a certain joy in breaking lines of code. Not because you want to break those lines of code, but because you want to actually make the product better, right? So if you are actually writing some piece of code to make something in your mobile phone work, it is just not about writing those lines of code. It is about making sure that you're able to bring all the brightest minds together to work in an amazing team and deliver that set of code beyond what you've just written. And that requires interpersonal skills. Let me tell you a story. Like I told you, I was a tester, right? And as a tester in the software industry, sometimes a lot of developers don't like you. Why? Because you're finding bugs in the lines of code that they've painfully written, right? But some of my best friends have been developers. And why is that? Is because of this ability with which we were able to look beyond just lines of code, because of interpersonal skills that we were able to say, hey, let's look at it as a product as a whole. So when you talk of a product, you're not just talking about code, but you're talking about testing, you're talking about the way it's documented, you're talking about how this particular piece of code is maintained for the next 3-4 years. You're talking holistically for that same set of product code. Your interpersonal skills as an engineer, as a coder matters a lot, because you are just not bringing lines to life, but you're also adding life to those lines, right? That you write as code, right? So your interpersonal skills are super important for you to being a very, very successful techie. You need to understand the brains that are actually doing various things of software development if you want to understand how to write amazing code, right? So you'll have to think like a tester. You'll have to think beyond. You'll have to think like an expert. You'll have to think like a leader, right? And this comes when you're able to converse, when you're able to have amazing, intelligent conversations with team members who can actually add value to you. And therefore, I definitely think a good start to being a techie beyond writing amazing code is to develop your interpersonal skills. Focus on your communication skills. Focus on how you're writing. Focus if you're able to get across your message right on why a certain algorithm has been implemented, right? Because asking those right questions sometimes in meetings, in discussions, in projects will actually make you a smarter coder in this case, right? So the first one is about being sharper and refined interpersonal skills. The next thing, I'm sure a lot of you would have actually seen this particular image, right? Girls can't what? Yeah, there is a beautiful misconception that a very controversial misconception, which I totally don't advocate, is that, hey, one gender is possibly better than the other in coding, in engineering aspects of doing something. But hey, haven't we proved all of them wrong, right? What do I mean by the techie hat? As technologists, you have to wear a techie hat. I've seen so many people when we've gone into campuses to hire, right? When I've had some of these coaching sessions with awesome young minds who are looking to pursue certain career aspirations in engineering and in technology, they say, "Oh, I'm from computer science. I want to code." Okay, and so it's like looking at the world with just one pair of lens on. If you have to be a solid techie who can deliver an amazing job, you have to go beyond just wearing one hat. And that means you've dabbled, you've wet your hands, you've actually gone ahead and been part of various stages of product development. Don't shy away from getting into testing. Don't shy away from writing those documents to document how a particular product works. Don't shy away from pre-sales. And this I can tell you from a personal experience in my career. I have experimented and I have been fortunate to work with amazing people who have allowed me to experiment with my career. Yeah. So going across multiple roles in the last 17 years, it has been so fruitful because then now I understand the end to end of what goes into something being developed, right? And then you're able to think one level up and say, okay, now I know how this can be taken care of for the business. But for all you algo queens over there, what does this mean? It means when you are coding, make sure you're wearing multiple hats on. Make sure that you are consciously getting into what are the different ways I can test this particular product. And there are like standard methods that you can use, right? Okay, someone's talking about this type of testing. Someone's talking about that type of testing. How do I do it? In fact, there was a time when testing wasn't really taken seriously. But today, test-driven development is a very, very active part of the industry, right? So wear on your techie hat. If you have eventually when you're going to be working under your projects, when you're going to be working as a young professional and you're going to be working with bosses, right, or leaders, they're going to be telling you, what do you think of this? Trust me, if you have more than one lens on, you will be able to give a much more valuable input, much more valuable feedback into whatever you're giving in as recommendations. So it's like, if you just have one of those black color lenses on you, those super cool aviator goggles, Imagine that you also have those funky yellow looking ones, maybe some pink ones, or even one of those things that Ranveer Singh wears in those different shapes. You will just get to understand how an entire product can be developed so beautifully, and how those lines of code that you eventually want to write or are writing or has been written by somebody, yeah, can be written so holistically that nothing can be broken. And what do you have at the end? You have an amazing product. Remember, I can be an amazing runner, right? I can run in whatever time that you'd want to clock. But if I don't win a medal, my pretty much running is of no use, apart from those little personal satisfaction that I get. So just like that, you can write amazing code, but eventually, if it doesn't fit into a product, if it doesn't work, it doesn't serve the purpose, right? And the only way in which you can experiment with this, the only way in which you can actually get into the depth of this is by wearing the techie hat. Yeah, and also linking this to a previous story that I shared is about how some of my best friends in the industry, in my professional network, have been developers whose code I've actually had the good fortune of working with and testing. It exactly links to this particular logic, is that when you start looking at things as a whole, you stop trying to hide those bugs. You stop trying to save that piece of code, when you know it is faulty. You get out of all of this and become a thorough professional. The industry values professionals. Yeah, when you have 4 people, say all of CGPA 9 point something, yeah, the one who will eventually get hired in one of those amazing places to be part of, yeah, are the ones who can look at a particular problem from various angles. Yeah, you're looking at the same problem from various levels. Yeah, so to all the parents who are watching this, if your ward, if your child is, or your son, your daughter, yeah, is saying that they want to experiment with it, please allow them to do it. Yeah, the time is gone where you only have to do one type of work to be successful in the industry, right? You have to allow people to experience things as a product in the technology world, and only then can they become professionals who will stand apart from the rest of them. Because the truth is that we have lakhs and lakhs of people graduating every year. But the ones who make successful techies, the ones who make, let me call them professionals for a moment, yeah? The ones who become successful professionals are those who have this holistic perspective of what they are writing, of what they are developing. And this stands true not just in a hardcore engineering industry, right? But this stands very, very true for the software industry as well. And in fact, if you see, sometimes there is this differentiation that we make as one as science and the other is engineering. But an engineering mindset gets developed if one is able to wear this multiple techie hat on, right? And moving one step ahead, we are beginning to see that software is no longer just software, right? You have software which is talking to machines. They are just not solving pure software problems. We're just not talking of application software. You have software that is solving problems in the connected industry. You're talking of software in the manufacturing industry. You're talking of software in the healthcare, right? And unless you have an end-to-end understanding of the whole thing, which will only happen with your techie hat on, you're never going to make it big there. Yeah. So the next time somebody says, no, don't worry about all that, just write those lines of code, smile, breathe, and make sure you wear your techie hat on and keep it on. Okay. Moving on to the next one. So this little uncle looks very, very upset over here. What do you think is his problem? He's written so much of those mind maps, so much of that code written, amazing software developed, amazing algorithms written for every single thing that he wanted to do. But hey, there is a problem. Fundamentally, he's possibly very, very stressed. Now imagine you write all of it make amazing products, but you don't have this simple understanding of how to make it impactful, simply because you don't know how to be calm yourself, you don't know how to persevere when things don't go well. Yeah. And if you're going to be rambling about in your emotions without knowing how to handle tough situation with software, there is going to be a problem. Yeah. Now, mind management is something that has been extremely underrated in the tech industry. Yeah. Initially, it was about being, hey, if you can code well, if you can do well, if you can make amazing software, you're amazing. But the truth is that we've seen, especially in the last decade, how some of the best brains of the industry have fallen flat simply because mind management has been a challenge over there. Right? And when we look at the crux of technology, let's understand something. That technology is ever fast, ever changing. Yeah. Technology that used to work, there was a point of time when projects used to run for 2 years and 3 years. These days, technology projects can't run beyond like few months. And even if you do, you'll have to constantly upgrading it. Why does that happen? Because change is a super constant in the technology industry. When there is a lot of change, beyond the speed at which one can adapt to that change, there is a goof up. There is stress. Yeah. And at that point of time, and then, it's a very fancy thing to say that, oh, in the IT industry, people work extremely long hours. No, that's not true. That's not true at all. Yes, there are long hours when it is needed, when there are demanding timelines, when you have a customer who's breathing through your neck, you definitely have all of that. But at that point of time, my dear, is when is a test of your skill. Right? No, I'm in no way supporting employers to be ruthless on their employees. I'm in no way saying that you must have unreasonable deadlines. But all I'm saying is at that moment, say I'm given a project to execute, right? And if at that point of time, if I'm not at my efficient best, if I'm not at my productive best, if I'm not at my happiest best, if I'm not at my interpersonal skills best, if I'm not open enough in my thinking to wear my techie hat on, I'm going to be very upset over the whole situation. I'm going to be very down and out. I'm going to be demoralized at work. I'm going to be upset over the projects that I'm creating at college. And I'm going to immediately jump on to only two things. The industry doesn't deserve me, or I don't deserve the industry. I can't be a techie, or oh, the techie is not in me. And that's exactly the world that we don't want. Because all you algo queens out there are people who can make that difference. Right? So when things get difficult at that point, at that very point, that moment of truth, if you are able to go through that pressure with a smile, your output is better, people like to work with you, yeah, and you definitely get solutions for stuff that you're stuck at. Yeah, and especially in places like, where in Amrita, a lot of other places, you will see that they are actually emphasizing a lot on the power of the mind. Why is that? Because that forms the crux of education. Yeah, and as a meditator myself, I can tell you that I am at my productive best when my head is absolutely calm. If people had to work under pressure, then war-torn countries would have been the most successful countries in the world. Yes or no? Yeah? Are you with me on this? Now, the fact is that unless you've learned how to handle pressure with a smile, either you're going to be in trouble yourself or you're going to be troubling others. And honestly, it doesn't matter how amazing code you write at that point of time. If you're going to be nagging all your teammates around, nobody wants to use those lines of code. They're better off without you. And that's exactly what shouldn't happen to this love of coding that you have, to this love of techie that you want to be. Right. So in all its underratedness, I would definitely, and I'm pretty sure that this is not something that possibly you expected out of a techie presentation. But hey, that's the truth. And as a corporate leader, I can tell you that when we work on tough projects, we definitely like to work with the set of people who are the calmest, who are achievers, but can do it with a smile. Because listen, let's face it, life is already so difficult. Why will I spend all my time in trying to beg you for your code? It's not going to happen. Yeah. And this is where change comes in. This is where power comes in. If you can handle your mind, studies have proven so much these days about how a simple meditation can make you be a better person as a human being. How few minutes of breath work that we very proudly call as pranayama can make a big difference to your state of mind. When that particular code is crashing 25 times in front of you, you need to have the mettle to stand up and say, okay, let's figure out, let's give it some more tries. Versus, oh my God, I can't manage this, bang the laptop down and getting out and going. It doesn't work. The difference between somebody who gives up and somebody who doesn't give up is that level of energy. And if you want to be more creative than what you are, focus on increasing your levels of energy. There's another beautiful study that I recently heard about is that when you are calm as a person for a long period of time, which means pressure is not taking over you, life can be difficult, right? That particular thing may not work according to what you want, but at that point of time, if you are able to hang in there with a calm state of mind, intuitively, it is said that your brain gives you solutions. Your intuitive power works for you to arrive at solutions, which is basically a double whammy for you. Your logic is working and your intuition mind is working. Both these put together forms an amazing product that you call as intelligence. Yeah. And as a techie, intelligence is something that you just bring on board. Right. So the third aspect, a very, very different aspect to what we've been speaking about. If you have to be a solid techie who is changing and adapting themselves to the changes of the industry, of the market, of the situation, focus on mind management. Get those few minutes of breath work into your life. Get those minutes of meditation into your life. Don't ask me, oh, I should be doing this when I'm 60. Hello. If you're writing code at the age of 60, sure, by all means, you can postpone all of this later. But if you want a smart, functioning mind right now, then jump into it. So that is our tip number 3. Moving on to our tip number 4, and one of my most favorites is having the right goals. When you have goals, make sure that these goals are well thought of. Now, when you look at these people climbing up this amazing Everest, the first thing that came to me when I saw this is, do you even notice that there's absolutely no support structure on either side? They're entirely relying on whatever equipment they are carrying, each other, and just letting go of everything to the perils of nature. But their only focus is that little tip. Yeah, you can be amazing at doing things, but if that tip of the mountain is not clear to you, if the tip of the mountain is not calling you, somewhere you will limit your growth of knowledge. And why do I say that? Let's take it with a simple example. Imagine you want to build a particular piece of software to solve a genuine real world problem. Case 2. Now imagine you just wanted to write lines of code without the need to solve a problem. In which case would you actually enjoy it? Case 1 or case 2? Yeah. You will definitely enjoy it in the case where you're solving a problem. Now, what are we talking of when we talk of problem? We're talking of having a goal. Yeah. Some of the best leadership workshops that we have today, some of the best discussions that we have in the industry today, the bottom line mantra that everybody is expected to answer is, hey, why are you doing what you're doing? Right? Otherwise, you can be very, very happy writing all those lines of code, which don't do anything to the world anyways. And then where are you going to get the value from? Yeah. So the value of a police officer comes because you have some thieves to catch. Yeah. The value of anything good that you do comes because you have problems to debug. Right. So have your problem statement very, very clear. And even especially when you're being part of hackathons, sometimes problem themes are given. Sometimes you're allowed, in open contests, you're just allowed to bring in your ideas and solve a real problem. You will see that the projects, the submissions, which typically have a problem solved, are the ones that will catch those additional eyeballs. And why is that? Because intrinsically, as human beings, we are driven by goals. Yeah. Remember when you were a child? Yeah. When you were just in primary school, what was your goal? You had a goal. Your goal was, oh, to go to college. When you came to college, you had a goal. Oh, I'll have to get a job, or I'll have to start my own business, or I'll have to do something else. You had a goal, right? And then you became, you say you graduated out of college, and that's where the problem starts. A lot of people forget having goals. Yeah, you just end up being in that rush. Yeah. But a lot of people who have a goal in the life are the ones who make it big. Yeah. And there's another secret to this. The bigger the goal, the bigger the success. Yeah. Now imagine you had to only solve hello world problems all through the life that you have writing code. It's not going to be interesting for sure, right? But the change started happening when you started writing code to make a bigger impact, to solve problems that were real, possibly to solve problems that mattered. And that brought out the skills in you. And this, my dear friends, is a game changer. When you are driven by goals, all of these things can come your way where your code doesn't work, your algo doesn't work. You possibly choose a stream of education that you didn't want to take up. But eventually, you are driven towards that particular goal. You don't give up. You don't jump off the building because things didn't work for you. Right? And that's metal. That's being a technologist who's holding technology as a weapon and solving problems that matter. That's the Brahmastra that we hold in our hands. That's the power of being a technologist with a goal. So you can be a great coder, but if you're not driven towards solving certain problems with a solid goal, it's going to be pretty mediocre. Right? I had one lovely chemistry teacher. In my 9th standard, I actually failed in chemistry. Okay, in my second term. So there are 3 terms, right, in school. So in my second term, I failed in chemistry. This lovely teacher took me under her wings, Mrs. Amy Solomon. And she told me only one thing, that, I will teach you chemistry, but getting good marks is your responsibility. And at that point of time, I was possibly a little too young to understand that. But exactly one term later, while I was studying and all that chemistry was being very, very difficult for me to get into my head, I remember she telling me once, sitting next to me, she made me sit down. She gave me some formula, some equations to write. And then she told me, you know why football is so much fun? What do you focus on in the football? And I'm somebody who loves sports myself. So, I don't really remember what I rambled out. But I remember what she told me. She said, when you're a football player, your focus should be on the goalpost, not on the people who are coming on your way to, while as you kick the ball. Because if your focus is going to be on this person, that person, that person, and in this context, that bug in the code, this bug in the code, that saving my face from this particular competition, that one, we're never going to make it to the goalpost. But if your focus is on that goalpost where you have to hit the ball, then you will figure your way out of dribbling across, and tackling across and then reaching that goalpost. And this, my dear friends, has been a game changer statement in my life. At every point of time, even when I was experimenting with this amazing career that I've had, for which I'm very, very grateful for, you need to know that the obstacles are only your testing points. If you have to be a technologist, if you have to be a technologist that matters to the world because you're actually solving so many problems with that amazing software that you're writing, the focus on the goal should be very, very clear. So having goals is definitely a very, very crucial part of being a great technologist, right? And while we do this, I'd like to take a moment now to come back to that little video that we were seeing. I want you to watch this video and then we do a little story about this.
What are you doing up here? I thought you were downstairs boxing chocolates. Oh, they kicked me out of there fast. Why? I kept pinching them to see what kind they were. The fourth department I've been in. Oh, I didn't do so well either. No.
All right, girls. Now, this is your last chance. If one piece of candy gets past you and into the packing room unwrapped, you're fired.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, this is easier. Yeah, we can handle this, okay? Listen, Ethel, I think this... I think we're fighting a losing game. Here she comes.
Fine, you're doing splendidly. Speed it up, Anna!
Nice little video, and this is one video that always cracks me up. You know, what's the connection with what we spoke to this lovely fun video? If you actually see, all of us are in chocolate factories. Yeah, every time you solve one problem, you've wrapped it up beautifully. You think your lines of code are working amazing. You have more problems coming your way to solve. You write more amazing code, you keep solving all of them. Yeah. And then you have some more coming in. And if you're working with people, some of the stuff that they haven't done are going to eventually land up in front of you. The chocolates that weren't wrapped by the first lady are going to land up as chocolates in front of you. The bugs that haven't been fixed by the other teammates in your project are going to land up in bugs in front of you. Right now, how are you going to wrap this? Are you going to try and just fix something and try to figure out something, put it onto your little cap and make it a big burden on your head? Or are you going to go make that a little fun piece, sit down and crack that code, wrap those chocolates with some fun, without the laughter track behind, will entirely depend on how amazing a techie that you are. And that will come when you have, we spoke. We realize now that to be a great techie is beyond just the obvious of what we are thinking. Of course, you need amazing code. You need to write the right lines of code. You need excellent logic, the smartest logic in place. You need to choose the right language, and with so much changing every time, you have to be on your toes to learn some of the best languages to code. You definitely have to solve problems that have final runs and outcome. But the truth is, beyond all of this, you also need to have great interpersonal skills. I want you to notice the kind of adjectives that we've added here. It is just not interpersonal skills. You need to have great interpersonal skills. Definitely have a portable techie hat that you can choose to dabble with multiple things and just experience software, just experience coding, just experience technology at its finest. Yeah, you definitely need to do awesome mind management because you don't want to be the person under solid stress when you're wrapping some of the best chocolates on planet. Yeah, and all of this will be driven when you have superstar goals in your life. In fact, which is why they say for any project that you want to develop, identify what the true north is. Identify what that north star is. Yeah, when you identify the true north, then you have a north star which is guiding you along. And then with that, you become super, super capable, super, super empowered, super, super happy in being the technologist, the amazing techie that you want to be. Because remember, being an awesome techie is not just about lines of code. Yeah, be the holistic techie that you're capable of. Yeah, experience the industry, experience this amazing world of technology to the best that it has to offer by being that awesome techie that you are capable of handling. With that said, we are pretty much towards the end of the presentations, and I now open the floor to questions. Nija, over to you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for a very wonderful session as well as an interesting and informative session. All the students will have had a great time with this. So, students, if you have any doubts, please type it in the chat box. And apart from that, anyone who's interested to be a part of AlgoQueen, you can register. The registration details are being given in the description box, so you can just view that there and you will be able to register. If you have any queries related to AlgoQueen, you can mail us at algoqueen@cb.amrita.edu, which is also mentioned in the description box. So yeah, that's all we have for you today. Thank you all for joining. I cannot see much of questions from the student side related to today's topic. So thank you so much everyone for joining, and thank you so much Sreekala ma'am for having us, being with us today. So thank you everyone.
I'd like to wind up by saying thank you so much to Nija, of course, and Kiran, who've been an amazing support. I'd also want to thank and congratulate the Amrita institutions for this amazing opportunity that they're putting up with. And I'm very happy to connect with the students, with the parents, with the amazing people who want to be part of it. This is where you can typically find me. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. This is my ID. You can reach me on Sreekala Sunderrajan as my LinkedIn ID. I'll be happy to connect, and my best wishes for the AlgoQueen. See you soon.
Thank you so much.